Hey folks, this is Rabble Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Tornado Tony Bennigan. And Psychic Tom Padgett and I have unveiled a new crystal ball that sees into the future. Stay tuned.
Soon to be available for $19.99. Plus shipping and handling.
Two for $49.99. If you act now or one of the first 500 callers in the next 15 minutes.
And Tom has already written down who all those 500 callers would be because he is that psychic.
Yes.
He might call you. You know you want to buy this. All right, well, I won some money on my first fantasy foray into the UFC there on FanDuel, but it was only $18 because I did not quite understand the dynamic of the main event and the points. I probably should have went with Instinct because Instinct told me the first pick lineup I made to put Holly Holm in the MVP slot, but then I changed it, so I went with a cheaper fighter. And that was the one to do. You had to have her in the MVP slot to win because she scored so many points over the 5 rounds, even though she got the decision. And I picked on the undercard the right fighter that ended up not getting the quickest knockout. And I was actually watching that on the feed, and I was like, yes! So I got only one guy who lost, and then two people who lost, but one of them was Juliana Pena, and that was close. She was winning that fight, I believe, before she got choked out. But yeah, that was a vicious one. Tough loss for her. She was just trying to be that rugged slugger, and she got caught in a submission. But yeah. That was a good one. And it was, like I said last week, Charles Jourdain, for some reason, was the big favorite. He was the most expensive fighter in the lineup, and he ended up getting a draw. Split draw with his opponent. So, wrong guy to pick. That was the bait that everybody went for. But I ended up going with, there's a guy named Luigi Vendramini, who got the biggest points for me. You got a TKO from a head kick and punches in the first round. And then the other big one was Dusko Todorovic. I picked him over Daquan Townsend, who was kind of like one of those journeyman type fighters. But Dusko, I noticed, pretty much finished almost every fight somehow. And he's undefeated, so yeah, gotta go with him. And he turned out to be a good winner. And then also Carlos Condit, he won a unanimous decision over Court McGee. That's one of the ones I ended up missing. I didn't get to see that. I saw all the rest of them.
Yeah, that was kind of encouraging in one sense. I mean, he looked obviously better than he had in his last 5 fights. But I don't know, maybe he's got one run left in it. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, he's just one of those guys, when he's matched up with the right people, he's going to entertain you, he's going to put on a good fight, but when you try to throw him up the rankings a few spots and challenge him, he just doesn't have what he used to have. But, that veteran experience you can never count out.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever recovered from that Lawler fight in 2015 where I thought he acted out a bit. You got to beat the champ. But then again, too, when he fought Woodley years ago and blew out his knee, and he's had a lot of issues on it. But he's always been so exciting. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. So I hope he can make another run at it. We'll see.
Right. We also had Kyler Phillips beating Cameron Else by elbows, TKO. That was just 44 seconds into round 2. That would have been another good pick. But I picked Juliana Pena. She had a tough go about it because Jermaine has kind of a good Muay Thai, boxing, kickboxing kind of base. And she only recently got into the jiu-jitsu and they were all talking all about how she tried to round her game up and really try to figure out the mixed martial arts aspect of it, because she struggled a little bit with it, making that transition, and really wasn't that great with the takedown defense, wasn't that great with the grappling, and she showed a lot of improvement in this fight. But I still thought Juliana Pena would have beaten her if it didn't come down to that guillotine choke, which she kind of fell into on her own, just trying to get the takedowns and do the ground and pound. But I thought she slugged it out well and made it a tough fight for Jermaine, and Jermaine kind of got lucky, but you can't really get lucky when you've been training that specifically. That's obviously a factor of training. It's more than luck, but in that case, if she didn't get it, that was going to be a decision win, I think, for Juliana. But Juliana also showed some need for improvement there with a little bit of defense, and she just was reckless, very reckless in a lot of cases, but she kind of had to be. She just pressed the action so she could win the fight. And she was trying to get a knockout, I think, more than anything, which kind of clouds your strategy a lot if you're trying to just win a technical fight like that with a person that's got so much experience. So they called it a technical submission. I don't know what the difference between a regular submission and a technical submission is. I guess when the person is out, it's a technical. If they tap out, it's a real submission. Because I think she was out, right? She was out cold. It was one of those. She didn't tap. She passed out. Anyway, also had the other loser I had was Jorgen De Castro. Carlos Felipe doesn't look like much, but boy, talk about aggressive. That guy just kept coming forward, and he was very pissed off that Jorgen kept trying to stall at the end and grapple and push him up against the cage. He wanted to fight, but Jorgen, if he looked where he was throwing his damn punches, he would have knocked this guy out with a couple of those right hooks or left hooks. But he just tended to look at the ground or look up at the sky or, just not look at all because he knew he was going to get hit for every hit he threw. He landed. But that was a total mess. It turned into both guys being just tired and really not wanting to risk getting a knockout. So they kind of held on to each other for a lot of the third round. But Carlos Felipe looked pretty decent for the time that he did have a chance to slug it out. Very deceiving with that frame. You think, this guy's going to get rolled over by Jorgen here. He's got all the experience. But Felipe is just one of those guys. He's no fear. Just comes right at you. So that was kind of interesting to watch. And then, of course, Holly did what Holly does and fought a very technical, no-nonsense fight. Really didn't look like she was in any trouble at all against Irene Aldana. And looking like she's going to sneak her way back up the ranks to a title shot. But great performance over 5 rounds there, and that gave me the lesson that you ought to go with the main event fighter 9 times out of 10 if you're going to do that MVP slot thing with the UFC fights on fantasy anyway. So we also have a UFC fight coming up this weekend. We'll talk about that one later. I did want to make sure we don't forget about Bellator. We had some European fights going on over the last couple weekends. We didn't get to preview last week, but I just wanted to mention a couple of the main fights. Conor McGregor's boy, James Gallagher, beat Cal Eleanor by submission in the main event on October 3rd in Italy over there. They called it Euro Series 9. And then we had Charlie Ward beating Andy Manzolo at 185. That was a middleweight fight. And who else? We had Charlie Leary winning by TKO over Kiefer Crosby at 155. And And then we kind of had like I think it was a double header. I didn't actually watch it, but I remember putting out the press releases on this. We also had a main event with Czech Congo in Paris, France. No, that's this weekend. My bad. That's the double header. Okay. Two different cards. We got MVP versus Houston and Congo versus Johnson. Czech Congo versus Tim Johnson. This is October 10th. This is the same card. The guy I interviewed, I don't know if you guys got a chance to listen to it, but I posted it. Dom Wooding. I got to interview him for about a half an hour. He's on the undercard, and he's on a Bellator developmental contract. So he's on this card in Paris, France. He's from the UK. And it's a good interview. Anyway, Czech Congo is the main event. Tim Johnson is his opponent. Czech is 30-10-2. This is a lot for an MMA fighter. Tim is 14-6. Czech is actually from France. Tim's from the United States. Both of them are over 6 feet and heavy, so it's going to be a good one. We go from heavyweights to featherweights. Saul Rogers versus Arbi Mezadov. Both of them are 13-3, so great matchup on paper. And they're both 145 pounds featherweights. For some reason, these are the only two they're showing. Oh, that's because it's the main card. Only 2 fights on the main card. Must not be much for prelims. We got Terry Brazier versus Yves Landau. Brazier's 11-3 versus Landau, who's 15-8. That's at 155 pounds. And here he is, Dominique Wooding. Calls himself the Black Panther. He actually kind of looks like that actor. That's probably why he got the nickname. Anyway, he's 6-3, fighting Fabakary Diatta, who's 6-0. But he told me personally, don't let the record fool you, because he knows all the promotions and all the fighters that this guy faced, and he hasn't faced anybody the caliber of fighter he's faced. So doing the opponent math, he's already kind of committed to getting this win, and not letting that 6-0 record intimidate him at all. And then we have another featherweight bout with Gene Ndoye, who's 8-1, and Ciaran Clark, who's 2-0. And that's about it for that one. And we got MVP in action. Michael Venom Page against Ross Houston, also on Saturday, October 10th. I don't know why they have 2 different cards in the same city. Paris, same venue or not. But Michael Page versus Ross Houston. Michael is 17-1. And we actually, Dominique and I got to talking about that one loss for Page, too, during the interview. So it was kind of interesting that he's fighting on the same day. But also Ross Houston, his opponent, is undefeated at 8-0. So we'll see if that's a glorified 8-0 or a real deal. And we got Oliver Enkamp versus Emmanuel Dawa. Enkamp is 9-2. Dawa is 9-3. And that's at 170 pounds. Ryan Scope versus Alan Omer. Scope is 11-3. Omer is 23-5. And then, great name for a fighter, Mads Burnell. He's 13-3, fighting Darko Banovic, who's 15-7 at 145 pounds. All right. Time to talk some boxing. You like that Rocky meme I sent you, Tony?
Oh my God, that was great. That was fantastic. Did you send it to Tom at all?
No. It's like...
No. It's the meme that goes out there, and it's like, the difference between, kids today and kids back then. And it goes, this is a picture of child abuse in 2020. And it's a kid sitting down, like, on, like, the bad step or whatever, and the parent's got, like, a finger in the kid's face. And you see the kid, like, all upset. Like, that's child abuse in today.
Because child abuse back in my day, and it was a picture of Rocky. It was in Rocky 2, like after Apollo had like pummeled him for like 14 rounds, and he's sitting on the stool, and his nose is broken, both eyes are swollen shut, and he's covered in blood. And he goes, "That was child abuse back in my day."
Yeah.
And Rich and I were saying, like, yeah, you know, like now it's like kids like, do you want a timeout? It's like, yeah, back in my day, do you want a lights out? And I'm not talking about going to bed early either.
Very good point. Things should change.
You know,
not for the better.
I'll make you sit on the bad step. Oh, no, not the bad step. I'll give you a timeout. And I said to Rich, you know, and in fact, it's funny, I was with him to go to a party in 2 days, and it all got, you know, messed up. My friend's, you know, sister-in-law, the two little girls are fine. The one, you know, is a teenager, and she can get kind of like, you know, sassy or whatever, but they're mostly good. The two little boys take after the father, and the father is like real, like, as my friend's wife says, he's a simpleton. Because then don't be offended if he says something stupid, because he's an idiot. Be surprised if he says something intelligent. And unfortunately, the little boys pattern after him, you know, just out of control, very mouthy for like teenagers. Hey, and then listen, when I was a teenager, 13, 14, you know, and I thought I was the coolest guy in the world, and I'd hang out with my friends and we would talk shit and all this and that, I checked that when I got home, you know, or I wouldn't be, you know, doing too well. But, you know, these kids, unfortunately, especially a lot of them today, like, they get away with shit. Like, kids were over my house last year, and they're going in and out, up and down, and this and that, and I'm like, yo, guys, you got to calm down a little bit. And then the kid turns to his mother, 13 years old, go get me a fucking soda. Well, my jaw dropped. Now, if I said that to my mom, like my mom, like I was seeing the look on her face. Unfortunately, I would also see the look on my dad's face. And at 13 years old, I wouldn't have been seeing 14. And this woman, she goes to get the kid a soda. I looked at her. My house, you don't talk like that. And this kid jumps up. Oh, wow. Yeah, jumps up. He's like 90 pounds, right? He's like, you know, like thin as a rail, like no muscular whatever, you know. And jumps up and comes up to me and goes, something, I'll punch your face. And he cocked his hand back, and I just flipped the jab out right upside the head. You know, it was almost like a flick backhand jab right upside the head. Boom, and he went right down. And the one girl's like, "Listen, that's what happened. You know, you grew up in my neighborhood. You know, you didn't run your mouth. You know." And then, but then all the time, like later, like I thought that was funny. I thought it was cool. I don't, you know, I could not imagine being in that age and like meeting, like, because this kid thinks like, no, I'm real famous because he's seen me on TV and shit. And it's like, now you have access to somebody you think is famous, you think is cool, you think is the guy you want to be like. And I've always tried to, hey man, how you doing? Hey bro, how you doing? How's school going? But when he talks to me, it's like real disengaged. I'm like, I thought this kid thought I was the coolest guy in the world. But I'm like, imagine me at 13 and I was like a big Vinny Paz fan, for example, or a big Hulk Hogan fan, or a big Sly Stallone fan, and I get a chance to meet them. I sure as hell am not going to be anything but respectful. But how crushed would I have been if, like, the person that I thought was so cool and I mouthed off to him smacked me upside the head? Mm-hmm. I would have been
Tony, have you met this kid's father?
Unfortunately.
Oh, so there's...
No, unfortunately, it doesn't. Like, he's really dim-witted, and my friend and my friend will talk about his father-in-law. His father-in-law was a real strict Italian. Didn't like this guy, you know, didn't like him at all. And he would even say to him, like, you know, up until the time that he died, he would say, listen, he goes, see that shovel I got out there? He goes, I'll be digging a grave in the backyard for you. You keep it up. And the guy would be like, does your father talk to everybody like that? You know, he doesn't get it. Like the other year, I was putting together one of those, like, social events, like one of those adult prom events, and I was losing money because people were, you know, not showing up and they were backing out on me and stuff like that. And so I was really frustrated, and it was a BYOB event, and he kept posting on my Facebook like, "Hey, what's the open bar? What's on tap?" And then his wife tell him, "John, shut up. The guy's already annoyed." And I said something to my friend Mike, and this guy's 150 pounds, and Mike's like, "I'm getting so worried." He goes, "Because I can see you're getting mad." And he goes, I just don't want something to happen where you just like hit him, because the guy's like a real bad drunk, and just a real, it's somebody you can't have a conversation with. So, but just talking about it, but that's the problem. Like today, it's like I watch all these videos and I see like these younger generation, and it's hard for me to understand. And I'm going to relate something to Tom here, because Tom, who served in our military, and Tom, who was in Vietnam during that time, as my dad was in Korea during that same time frame. To me, yeah, I can read about it and I can read history, but I didn't live through it. Even as a child, I see a lot of these kids today, and it's hard for me to realize, being 44, that kids today that are freshmen in college weren't alive when 9/11 happened. So in my mind, because I was 25 when it happened, everybody was around for 9/11, and I remember how unified we were after that, and how people were more respectful and more caring towards each other. And now it's like when I see what was especially going on this year and rioting and protesting and all that, and I'm like, don't you remember 9/11? And I'm looking at these kids that are like 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and I'm like, no, you don't.
Very good point.
Even if you were alive, you were too young.
Now think of that. That was a blink of a fraction of a second in the overall scheme of things. And look at the difference in one generation.
Yeah, really.
That's a very good point. Because on that day, I don't care what your party affiliation was, everyone was pretty much in. Think if it would happen today. That's how it's gone downhill.
And it's like back then, you could not find an American flag anywhere. Stores were selling out of them. Now I'm watching these videos where people are throwing the flag on the ground. And I know this happened a lot back in the 70s and all that, especially during...
Not like today. Not like now.
I mean, it's bad. Like, I'm seeing these people, like, dancing on a burning flag saying, fuck America, fuck this, fuck that. I'm like, you really fine. Go somewhere else. Go to Colombia. Go to,
go to Iran. Go to Iran. Well, they do that all the time.
Try to loot over in Iran. They'll cut your damn hand off for throwing a Molotov cocktail over there.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, Justice.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's crazy. But, like, the meme was, Rich said, when we first were getting on the air, I sent this to Rich today on Facebook. I said, Rich, did I call it? Did I predict it or what? Danny Garcia, Earl Spence postponed 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I said,
I see that.
They were postponed it 3 weeks. Texas, the Dallas Cowboys Stadium in Arlington, which seats a good 80,000 plus people. So even if you're at 25% capacity, you're at 20,000 right there. The size of, like, the T-Mobile Arena, right?
Yep.
So, or the size of, the Staples Center, or Madison Square Garden. I thought originally they would say, like, okay, they were going to look for, like, a bullshit excuse, like they did with we want more time to promote. You don't need to promote Mike Tyson, Roy Jones. You call somebody on a Friday to give Tyson Jones tomorrow night, they'll drop their plans.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yeah. As soon as I saw that today, I tagged Rich in it, and I said, Rich, didn't I call it? Mm-hmm. And I thought they would have said, like, some bullshit like, Errol Spence, needed 2 extra weeks because of back spasms from last year's car accident, or some bullshit like that. But they're like, fuck it. we're not even misleading you. We just want to say we want people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting development. Also, our former guest actually was on the losing side of his big step up against Gabriel Flores, undefeated fighter, last week. He was 18-0 going in. He's 19-0 now, Gabriel Flores Jr. It was a unanimous decision loss, so No shame in that. No, he's never been KO'd, Ryan. Knock on wood. From Quincy, where I went to high school. We had him on a few years ago. Anyway, he'll bounce back. Also, Ivan Baranchik got knocked out over the weekend by Jose Zepeda.
Possible fight of the year, and I missed it because I didn't recognize the names. And the MMA card, I just wanted to see Condit, and that was the only fight I watched. And when I heard about that fight, I said, why didn't I catch that line? You know what? I mean, I got the replay, but wow.
I'll tell you the mistake I made. There were two cards on that night. There was an ESPN Plus card, and there was a Showtime card. And, you know, when you have the ESPN Plus app on the TV with the Fire Stick like I do, you gotta, you know, change the input. So you go, mine would be from input 2 to input 3. Then you put the channel on. So first I was on the ESPN Plus card because it started first. Then to Showtime, mainly because I wanted to watch the Paul Kroll fight. You know, he's Philadelphia, and I know we have some mutual friends. I think I met him last year down at the card. So I put that on, and as the Paul Kroll fight was going on, and it wasn't really that good, wasn't really that entertaining, but I'm watching it just because, you know, support the Philly guy. I thought the decision was terrible. When that was ended, you know, I felt myself really getting tired. I was out late before. I was really worn out, and I was thinking, you know, my dad was watching the fight. I'm like, the Showtime card here, in case I fall asleep and you want to change the channel, you don't have to worry about changing the input or anything like that. Boy,
Well, Tony, I'm sure you've seen the replay.
I just clips. I sit down and watch the whole fight. You know, I got to pull that on YouTube.
Oh, God. So, I mean, I know you know the outcome, but I mean, it's still worth watching on replay. It's like, my God, that was like a movie.
Good fight. I'm just looking at what's upcoming now. Before I forget it, I know I had this story queued up for last week, but I forgot it because it was on the computer I do the Skyping on, or not the computer I do my reading of the news on. But you don't have to worry about butchering cows anymore when you want your boxing gloves. You can have green boxing gloves now. Literally. Made out of cactuses. Have you guys heard about this? Cactus boxing gloves. No. I prefer mine with the spike still attached, but I don't think they come that way. Actually, they've perfected a way to make cactus leather, and this is a real thing. They've come out with cactus boxing gloves. I'll send you guys the link later. I'll put it in the description to the show, too. But it's on a website called greenmatters.com. Cactus leather boxing gloves. So now for all you green freaks out there and vegetarians who want a box but feel bad punching people with cow skin, you can do it with cactus skin. Go figure. Anyway, sustainable. And then you don't have any cow farts. Messing up the environment. It's a good idea. I like it. Anyway, it's our oddball story of the week. We got some fights going on Friday night this week. I know I got a mismatch of the week. Also, we've got somebody's always got to go fight. I think is going to be on Friday instead of
How about
Saturday.
any Jesus fights? We got any of them?
Jesus fights? I'm not sure. We might not. We might have no Jesus fights this week, but I'm pretty sure we have an Elvis fight of the week, so that'll make up for it. And Elvis has an opponent type competition. The King. I think it's a setup. They want him to win. Anyway, over in Dubai, we have some ESPN Plus fights on Friday from Caesar's Palace, Dubai. So I didn't even know existed until now. But the main event is Viktor Kotochigov, who is 12-0 against Maxie Hughes, who's 21-5-2 for the WBC International Lightweight title. And then welterweights, Rohan Date, who is 12-0-1 against Macaulay McGowan, who is 14-0-1. I think that's going to be our somebody's always got to go fight, because I think that's the best one, even though I never heard of either of the guys. But I believe the mismatch of the week also is on this card. We've got Hovhannes Bakhov, who is making his pro debut at super lightweight, fighting Samuel Gonzalez, who is 22-6. Definitely seems unfair there. Not quite right. And we got some.
Wow. I mean, you can see if a guy making his pro debut and putting somebody at 6-22, maybe.
Yeah, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a misprint. Anyway, we got Saul, the Saul fight of the week here. It's super bantamweight on Telemundo on Friday from Kissimmee, Florida. Saul Sanchez, he's 13-1, fighting Daniel Lozano, who's 15-9-1 for the vacant WBA Feta Centro super bantamweight title. Say that 10 times fast. And then we've got another ESPN card on Friday, just regular ESPN. From Vegas, in the bubble, featherweight main event. Some interesting characters. Emmanuel Navarrete, only 1 loss and 31 victories. And he's fighting Ruben Villa, who is undefeated, 18-0. This one's for a vacant title, the WBO World Featherweight title. And it's not really a whole hell of a lot of support to this card, but we do have the Elvis fight of the week. Elvis Rodriguez. Spanish Elvis. He's 9-0-1, fighting Cameron Crail, who is 17-16-3. So, yeah, what they call a journeyman for sure. And that's it for Friday. But we got some action on Saturday, too, all over the world. Things are coming back to full swing on the boxing schedule. The whole world is waking up here. Big ones in Germany here. And I'm talking big, like big records, too. Robin Krasnicki. Here's his record. 50 wins and 6 losses. No draws somehow. 56 fights, you'd think you'd have a draw. But no, I guess that's the kind of fighter he is. Fighting Dominic Boesel at light heavyweight. He is 30-1, and this is for 2 titles. The interim WBA World Light Heavyweight title and the International Boxing Organization World Light Heavyweight title. This one's probably a really... Somebody's always got to go because it's the first title. The German title. But German BDB heavyweight title on the line in the co-main event. We got Peter Kadiru, 9-0, and Roman Gorst, who's 6-0. And we got another Roman at cruiserweight, 10-0, fighting Daniel Venci, who's 11-6. That's for the vacant German International Cruiserweight title. And talk about records. Anatoly Muratov at middleweight, 22-2, fighting Sergey Huliakovich, who is 43-13 with 1 draw. And it seems like he's done all his losing lately, because he's 1 draw and 5 losses came in his last 6 fights. Anyway, that's about it. Leave. See if I missed anything real quick here. Oh, we might have a new mismatch of the week in New Zealand. 18-3 Nicholas Charalampus fighting, get this, Junior, the guy's name is too. Junior Tapuni. He is 0-5-1. Sounds like somebody needs to pull him aside and say, hey, Junior, boxing might not be for you.
It might not be your best option. Yeah. Right?
Maybe he's one of those guys in the crowd that they pull out the last minute.
Yeah.
Hey, looking for some work tonight? Hey, you want to make a quick 500?
Yep.
Yeah.
Suit up. You got your trunks? Oh, here's an interesting one. Oh, this must be the bare knuckle.
Oh, 20 years ago, and
forgot they put the bare knuckle
Larry
on
Holmes' nephew. I mean, came in there looking like, a Greek god, muscle upon muscle, and the guy he was fighting looked like, to describe him perfectly, the movie The Sandlot, the kid that was the catcher, the great Hambino.
Yep.
He looked like him, it was just that freckle face, red hair, soft midsection. He came in basketball shorts and sneakers. So who's predicted to win that fight. And, Larry, Holmes' boy, I forget what his last name was, because it was his sister's son or somebody. And he comes out there and he's pumping the jab, and this kid's all sloppy, and, you know who's going to win this fight. And this kid's in the area after about 30 seconds, and the Holmes boy, he's smiling or whatever, and he walks right into a right hand, and boom, one shot. It was the whole place was silent, and Larry was doing the color commentary, and you couldn't hear him. Obviously you're live in the crowd, but you just look at his face, and his jaw was on the table. Like, are you kidding? He ain't mine.
Oh, I wish I could have seen that. As Larry Churchill would say, boxing is the theater of the unexpected.
Very true.
and that's so rare, but when it happens, it's so exciting. God, nothing like it.
I was writing a list one time, and I don't know if I even wrote a full article on this. In the list one time, and it was just the most unusual things I've seen at live boxing matches. And I had rules. I'm like, it had to be a fight that I attended live, and I would just write like different things. That was one of them. The other time where I told you the guy Rich Stewart came up to the Blue Horizon balcony looking to beat the shit out of those hecklers. I was at a fight one time in another place, National Guard Armory, Northeast Philly, and it was a guy, Mark Oaktree Brown, who I talked to a couple times. This great, funny, charismatic, big. He looked like Michael Duncan a lot. Charismatic as could be, funny. He was hitting this guy to the body, and you hear the guy going, and went to throw up, and Oaktree tried to run up and hit him and slipped and fell in the vomit.
Awesome.
I mean, it's so stupid. Sitting in the front row at the time with Scott, 2 seats down from Michael Spinks, when the girl's mouthpiece got knocked down, it came flying and landed in his lap.
Wonderful. I forgot they list the bare knuckle matches on BoxRec now, and we got quite the knuckle cracker going on in Salina, Kansas, at a place that our co-host maybe has failed to mention that he owns, Tony's Pizza Event Center. What's this all about, Tony?
That's right.
In Kansas.
I got time to name my new side,
Yeah, I see how it goes. Alright, anyway. Joey Beltran's in the main event. He's 3-1-1, fighting Marcel Stamps, who's 2-0. And this is all bare knuckle records. Nico Hernandez making his debut at flyweight against Chancey Wilson, also a debut. And the big debut maker, Dave Caveman Rickles, which is a great name for a bare knuckle fighter. Nickname, I mean. But he came from Bellator and always had lots of tough fights in Bellator.
So he's left Bellator, I guess he must.
And obviously he's gone out to pasture sort of for the MMA field, but he's jumping into this, which is happening a lot more than you'd expect. I didn't really think this was going to take off like it did, but it's interesting that people are getting involved. Anyway, he's fighting a guy named Clifford Wright.
That's our former guest, Ken Shamrock predicted it.
Yeah. And one of my favorite guys, Sam Shoemaker at heavyweight. He's 3-1-1. Looks like a truck driver. And, man, he just has this overhand, just haymaker. Shoemaker's haymaker. It's just unreal. He's, I've seen him a couple times. Just blow people away. He's facing Josh Burns, who is an even 4-4. so far in the bare knuckling. Then we got Isaac Doolittle at light heavyweight. He's 1-0, fighting Brandon Johnson, who's fighting in his debut. And you gotta love this guy's name, Rowdy Akers, 1-0, fighting Lauren Hermrick. He's making his debut. Rowdy, yeah. That's his name. That's not even the nickname. That's his name. Anyway, that's about it for the big ones. And then we got to go to UFC this weekend. Marlon Moraes fighting Corey Sandhagen in the main event. Moraes is 23-6-1. Sandhagen is 12-2. He's had 10 knockouts on those 23 wins. Moraes, 6 submissions, 7 decisions. 3 of the losses come by TKO or KO, 2 submissions, and only one decision loss. So if he does lose, it's probably going to be by stoppage. Anyway, that should be a good fight. And I don't know what this terminology means anymore with the UFC because of all this ESPN Plus stuff, but I'm really hoping this is actually on ESPN, the whole fight. Because it seems like half the time you expect it to be a free fight, and then all of a sudden it's on ESPN Plus, which is not really free unless you have ESPN Plus. Anyway, co-main event here is pretty decent. Makwan Amirkhani, 16-4, fighting Edson Barboza, who's 20-9, and probably responsible for one of the nastiest knockouts in UFC history. We haven't seen a whole hell of a lot of that action from him, though. He's been in some wars. He's been tenderized a little bit. So we'll see which Edson Barboza shows up to this one. But this is no cheap date, as Tom would say. Amirkhani is pretty nasty himself. And then the big boys back in action. Ben Rothwell, 38-12. Fighting Marcin Tybura, who is 19-6. And Big Ben is really not only big, but tall. Very tall fighter. So Tybura is really going to have to do something special to get that 20
I hope he was able to train. You know, he's from Kenosha and had his own gym there. I hope he didn't get burnt. I never heard about it.
Yeah.
If it affected him. And, yeah, I met him one night. He fought up in Cleveland. A giant of a man. Nice guy, though. Very, very soft-spoken.
You talking about Ben?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah, Big Ben. He's a tall dude. I used to actually write about him a little bit when I first started the website. Back when he was with, like, the IFL. That's where you got to start, I believe. When they had the team leagues and stuff. That died out quickly.
Well, no, he had fought before that. He fought at the local event we had here going back to 2005. So that was a little before the IFL really got going. But he's back in the militant stage.
Awesome. Also, we have Marcus Perez, 12-3, fighting Diricus Duplessis, who is 14-2. Alan Bodot, or Bodo, I don't know how you pronounce that one. 8-1, fighting Tom Aspinall, who's 8-2. And we got Yusuf Zalal, 10-2, fighting Ilya Topuria, who's 8-0. And Tom Breeze, 11-2, against KB Bular, who's 8-0. And that's one of those wild card ones that I put on my fantasy team this week. I'm going with the undefeated guy on that one, Bular, even though Breeze is sort of a heavy favorite on there. Hoping for the upset there. Just for money purposes. I don't know either one of these guys. But anyway. We have Chris Daukus, 9-3, fighting Rodrigo Nascimento Ferreira. That's another one I went with because he's undefeated. He's 8-0. And we got Impa Kasangani, who is 8-0, fighting Joaquin Buckley, who's 10-3. Tony Kelly, 5-2, against Ali Al-Kazi, who's 8-4. Giga Chikadze, 10-2 against Omar Moraes, who's 10-0. Tracy Cortez, 7-1 against Stephanie Egger, who is 5-1, sorry. And then the first fight of the night, Bruno Silva, 10-4-2 against Tagir Ulanbekov, who is 10-1. And that's about it for the scheduled events. Any other newsworthy stories you guys heard out there we forgot to mention?
Well, we mentioned the Spence Garcia fight getting postponed, which I think was pretty newsworthy. And I'm trying to, it's funny, it's been, other than that, really slow on the news front. So I had that gut feeling, because you have everything overshadowing right now. You had the vice presidential debate last night. You had, the election coming up, and you still got the COVID and all that. So everything is like this, I think, an eerily quiet right now.
Right.
Something big is in the works. I have that feeling.
Well, I don't know if we ever mentioned this, but supposedly, a couple weeks ago, Dana White said he was going to have a big boxing announcement soon. And I haven't heard anything yet on that front. Another situation going on. I haven't really read too much into the articles, but I've been seeing a lot of headlines lately of fighters having disagreements with Dana White, and now one of them, I think it's Dustin Poirier, or no, not Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson now has put out a tweet or something on social media saying, bro, you're not my friend, talking about Dana White. So it's kind of an interesting turn of the tables here. I talked about it a little bit in the last couple episodes because of the news going on with Conor McGregor and how he's basically trying to be his own promoter and trying to distance himself from the UFC and go into boxing if he has to. It's just like he has major problems with the UFC. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that he wants to fight Dustin Poirier more than anything. He thinks that's his most entertaining fight possible, I believe, and he's probably right. But Dana White, for some reason, hasn't made it happen. And now that they put it out there that they want to do it for charity, Dana White suddenly wants to make it happen. So it's just such a big transition. It's turned into, at first it was you want to be Dana White's friend. Everybody wants to be Dana White's friend. That's how you get in the UFC. Now, everybody wants to claim they're not Dana White's friend. That's how much he's slipped from popularity with these guys, these fighters. It's come a long way from the do you want to be an effing fighter speech. I think a lot of guys would smack him in the face if he tried to give that speech to them today. But, yeah, it's just crazy. These guys are just definitely taking a stand for once. And I guess, the only saving grace for the UFC that I keep giving them compliments for is that they've been able to sort of set the example for all of sports and say that we can still promote and put on events. We're going to find a way. So I still give Dana props for, setting that up and managing that and organizing that, but he also still has a team behind him, number one, and number two, you still can't forget about the fighters, because ultimately that will destroy the company, I think. If these fighters start taking a look at Bellator, and Bellator starts growing to an extent where they can poach people back. I know they just lost one, Michael Chandler, to the UFC, but it was going to a trend where more fighters were leaving the UFC and ending up at Bellator. But 9 times out of 10, those were guys that really didn't compete in the UFC. So if we start seeing real big names cross over, that's when we're going to know that Dana White fucked up one too many times. But he's going to be the one that ruins it.
What it reminds me of? Go back around 40 plus years ago. 40, maybe even more than that. It reminds me of back, in the starting actually more in the 60s and then exacerbating in the 70s and really hitting an arc in the 80s in boxing. If you look, you had your heavyweight championship, and your 8 divisions. Then they were adding divisions, so it started getting more and more and more. But you go back to when Ali got stripped of the title in '67, and then they were doing the tournament to be the heavyweight champion of the world. But Joe Frazier wasn't in it. So then, so you have this. Then Joe Frazier beats Buster Matthews for the heavyweight championship of 5 states. So then he finally basically unifies the title, and then then Ali comes out of exile. They fight. Now you have a lineal heavyweight champion again. But then later in that decade, they were saying, okay, now you have the WBA. Then you add the WBC. So now you have basically 2 heavyweight champions. Larry Holmes has the WBC belt, and then for whatever reason, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, he's getting stripped because he maybe wasn't fighting somebody or whatever. Then the IBF comes in and says, no, we're going to recognize you as the heavyweight champion of the world. Now there's 3 titles. And that's where everything started getting all crazy, right? And it was like, so now it's, okay, if you don't want to represent, the UFC, okay, now it's like you have another option. So in MMA, it's hard to say, yeah, I'm the best in the world because there's different brands. So it's like you could be the WBC champion but never have to fight the guys that, like, it's the IBF champion or some of maybe the top contenders because they're ranked by the IBF but not by the WBC. Same thing. You could be the baddest guy in the UFC, but there could be some great Bellator fighters out there and some other cage fighters out there. And you could say, man, I would love to see so-and-so fight so-and-so, but they're in different brands, different sanctioning bodies. They're being kept away from each other. And, so, and it reminds me of that, and I'm like, I don't want to see it, go down that path. And part of the reason I was always more of a boxing guy, being a traditionalist, in boxing, boxing overall is a sport. So, Mike Tyson's the WBC champion, and they want to put him up against, Lennox Lewis or Evander Holyfield, who's got whatever title. Even if they're with different promoters, they could still make that happen. In UFC, it's like UFC and, Bellator and all that, and then you have, all the other leagues, they're all different. So it's like, to get into that, you have to sign basically your life over to Dana White. I'm like, so boxing might have different sanctioning bodies, but it's still a whole, where a lot of your mixed martial arts are different leagues. And, I still think the best way to ever get through it is to consolidate.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing some of that in boxing. We'll see some cross-promotions. And your point's well taken on that, but the UFC is still considered the top dog.
Right.
So there's not, and it is changing somewhat, because there is that crossover from guys that will have success in Bellator after the UFC. But it's still, in the overall scheme of things, the UFC is still, considered the best. But I do hope it does. There are some changes, but I don't think it'll happen as long as Dana White's running the UFC.
Right.
Because as far as he's concerned, Bellator is like the class a AAA team. It's not the major leagues. Wouldn't you agree, Reg?
Well, I told Dominic myself when I interviewed him, your boss is one of the better ones in the promotional game because he was an actual fighter. Scott Coker, who actually ran what was it? The one that the UFC overtook when they said it was going to be business. No.
Strike Force?
Strike Force, yeah. So Scott Coker once ran Strike Force for the UFC. He was their employee when they bought it out, and they pretended it was going to be business as usual. So he's seen the inside game of the UFC, and he probably knows what their whole planning is. What their ultimate goal, where they want to go is, and he is doing totally different work with Bellator. Number one, he never set up a gateway fee or anything like that. His fighters are free to get whoever they want to sponsor them. Put whatever they want on their little banner they put out behind them when they get announced. And the UFC has made a monopoly on that. People got to pay them to sponsor fighters, and they can't take any of their sponsor stuff to Fight Week events now. So it's very restrictive for them in a way. They can only make money through the fights and through traditional sponsorship arrangements, or maybe, doing a commercial for TV for your local car dealership or something if you're famous enough. But there's really just limited options. Whereas in Bellator, they may not pay out as much per fight for every fighter, but you've got that option to make money elsewhere. And if you hustle, you can do it. But obviously, it's not perfect because you've got a guy like Michael Chandler leaving for the UFC. And he left on a high note, too. He won his last fight pretty handily. But anyway, I don't know if they'll ever actually merge, but it's promising that we saw that trade between the one championship people and the UFC, where they did that straight up trade.
Well, I remember when I was a kid in the NFL for football, they had the AFC, which was a whole separate kind of like the small brother of the regular NFL, and they were AFL and the NFL, and then they wound up merging,
right?
And it really became legit when Joe Namath won the Super Bowl. So,
well, I think it's going to take a real miracle for them to avoid a big hit once this antitrust lawsuit plays itself out too. I mean, that's another thing hanging in the background for the UFC. As far as what they're going to owe all these past fighters, that could be billions of dollars. That could really, wipe out the whole investment pool and piss a lot of people off that were thinking this was going to be nothing but a payoff to have a piece of the UFC. They're going to turn out to be in debt. That could be a huge thing if it turns the wrong way for the UFC, and that's still going on. I mean, there's probably already millions of dollars sunk into that thing from both sides. Tens of billions, millions. But anyway, the bottom line is the fighters are turning against him. It used to be when the Fertittas ran the show, I don't know whether it was because of their mob history that I've documented or because just their management style that they took from those days, and maybe they don't have the threat of, roughing you up with a mobster anymore, but they have the threat of just being ruthless businessmen. But they had a hand, like clenched fist, leading the UFC. Nobody wanted to talk against them or Dana White or anything when they were in charge. And nowadays you're having people openly criticizing Dana White, knowing it's going to affect their careers and not giving a flying fuck. And it used to be just a few guys here and there, the Nate Diaz's, the Ally Quintas, but now it's the big stars, Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. They're all deciding to take swipes at the boss. So it's interesting to see how the corporate situation has changed it. But hopefully they figure things out. I don't know what this boxing announcement's going to be, but I'm sick of hearing the bullshit from Dana about this stuff of boxing when it never happened. So I hope it's in relation to that, and that they're actually going to do something instead of talking smack about it. Anything would be good. But yeah, if I could say anything good about them, I'm glad that they continue to figure out a way to put on these events. It's kind of spurred a lot of people on to say, hey, it can be done, we can't control it. They've done a lot better than the NFL, I'll give them that. I mean, we got almost whole teams wiped out by this corona thing with the Tennessee Titans. Patriots actually had a couple of Cam Newton and one of the cornerbacks now, Stephon Gilmore. And then Tony's team's got a big game coming up, the Philadelphia versus Pittsburgh game.
We are severely short-handed. It's amazing. We beat the Niners the other night, who's also equally depleted.
That was great.
You got to look right now. It's like you're beat up, and you got a lot of young, unproven guys playing, a lot of practice squad players playing. But you know what? This is a chance for somebody to say, you know what? I made the roster. I'm buried in the depth chart, but because people are hurt, I get a chance to play some football, and I'm going to step up and do the very best I can. Like the guy that caught the winning touchdown the other night, it was like a 40-some yarder over the shoulder, right in the basket. He had been on the practice squad the day before. They just activated him, and he catches the winning touchdown. The guy that intercepted and got a touchdown off the interception was a linebacker that was basically his first career defensive play. He had been a practice squatter and a special teamer. Stepped in for an injury. The guy that was their starting left tackle protecting the blind side up until 2 years ago never played football because he was an Australian rugby player. But he's athletic. He's 6'8", 350. They're just trying to teach him technique and figuring, hey, the guy's insanely athletic. If he can learn some football, maybe. Guy gets hurt, put him in. He held his own.
Right.
You never know. I'm watching the Foles-Brady rematch right now.
Oh, yeah. I got fantasy money on that, too. I'm not winning any.
Who'd you pick?
I picked the Tampa Bay running back and Tom Brady in the MVP slots, and obviously they're not the MVPs right now. But
Brady I know he had one touchdown pass. A touchdown and 2 field goals. And it's funny, Rich. Right before we were talking, I was making a comment on a Facebook status about some old 1980s wrestling card from Philadelphia.
Yep.
And the guy that commented right below me, his name was Richard Bergeron.
Yep.
I was like, oh wait, that's a different guy.
Yeah, that's funny because I found just shooting around the internet one day. There's a Rich Bergeron, not only just Richard, but he calls himself Rich, and he's a tree surgeon down in New Jersey. So we have that in common. We both work on trees, and we both have the same name. It's just unreal.
Do the trees.
Yeah. Crazy. Anyway, one last story I wanted to mention before we get off the air here, off our recording. This is our true crime story of the week. One of George St. Pierre's former coaches is in some severe hot water. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that Netflix show Ozark about the money laundering.
Mm-mm.
Or heard of it?
I've heard of it. I've never watched it.
It's one of the best shows on earth, I think. Yeah. It's a complicated thing. I mean, you think money laundering is nice and simple. It's a mob thing, but there's a lot that goes into it. So anyway, this guy, this former coach of George St. Pierre, got wrapped up in a big money laundering drug type scenario, and they were arrested. This guy named Vargotsky, he's a former cornerman for George St. Pierre, and he was also himself a kickboxing champion from the Ukraine, and an ex-Soviet Union Special Forces sniper who served in Afghanistan during the 1980s. So, badass dude, involved in some bad stuff. He was the last of 19 suspects to be arrested as the result of a major RCMP, that's Royal Canadian Mounted Police, investigation targeting a criminal organization in Montreal and Toronto. And, of course, that's where George used to train. The 2-year investigation led to the arrest of 17 suspects in February 2019. And another suspect was arrested on October 24th, 2019 in Spain. So they suspect those involved with the money laundering network collected money from criminal groups in Montreal and laundered it by offering a money transfer service to drug exporting countries. The network moved money collected in Montreal through various individuals and currency exchange offices in Toronto. The network used an informal value transfer system with connections in Lebanon, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, the United States, and China. The funds were then returned to the drug-exporting countries such as Colombia and Mexico. During the investigation and searches, police seized drugs worth $2.2 million, including cannabis, cocaine, hashish, and methamphetamines, and also seized $32.8 million in foreign currencies, properties, and other assets. So the suspects will face several charges, including conspiracy, possession of drugs for the purpose of trafficking, instructing the commission of an offense for a criminal organization, and laundering proceeds of crime. So yeah, probably going to do a lot of prison time there. But, looking at that, geez, that's... If you're going to do some freaking money laundering, it's like, these people that buy insurance companies to commit fraud. Well, geez, that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, right.
This is, that's quite the scheme. Money exchange service to drug exporting countries. That's ingenious, but obviously not ingenious enough. Because they got caught. So anyway, that's about all we've got for this week. Till next week when we'll have some fights to talk about.
I just sent you guys a photo for one, just to give you guys a little bit of humor for the day, because that's what I do. And I was going to tell you something else, fight related, but kind of, so have you got, Rich, I hope you heard of him, a fighter out of the New England area, relatively famous, Mickey Ward.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Heard of Mickey Ward. Okay. Do you know do you know the actor that played him?
Oh, yeah, Mark Wahlberg, of course.
Exactly. Now, one of my fun things to do in life is, I used to do this at work all the time. I'd come in from walking outside, have my headphones on. I'm like, you know what, man, I said, I loved growing up in the 80s and the 90s. They said, why? I said, we had some really great music. I said, you ever hear the song Good Vibrations by Marky Mark? I said, that was a great song. It was on my playlist. And I said, that song is great. I said, man, he was talented. Whatever happened to him? He was like, that's Mark Wahlberg. I'm like, who? Marky Mark. I said, that's not the same guy. Yes, it is. And then we get angry with me because I wouldn't believe him. And then I'm like, what are you going to tell me next? Will Smith is the Fresh Prince? Will Smith is the Fresh Prince. Get out of here, I'm having fun with it, Well, the other night, I was at my friend's bakery. He was doing a event. It was like an Italian feast. And when he did it last month or 2 months ago, he didn't have online ordering yet, so it was all drive-through. So when he said he invited me, he goes, listen, I want you to come in the Phillies outfit. I said, okay. So I come in the Phillies outfit, and so I didn't have to go through the hour-long drive-through line, place my order, and get my food. I just pulled in, parked, put the hat and cape on, walked up and put an order in, which was great. And then I'm sitting there, and I'm taking photos, and I got my fake WWE belt. I'm doing all these photos, and I hear a guy in the building next door. He has the cops there. He's running his mouth. And I'm like, what's this guy's problem? Apparently the traffic was so bad it was blocked in his barber shop. Big goofy-looking guy, big beard or whatever. And he's like, there's some guy here taking selfies. Must think he's a wrestler or something. I said, you got a problem? Talking to you. I said, no, I heard you say something. So what do you got to say? I don't even know who you are. I said, well, and let's keep it that way. I have to mouth off this guy. And I'm going to say, buddy, this hat and cape comes off, you're going out. That's what's going to happen. Right in front of the cops, I don't give a shit. But this one that he had the other day, you can order online. And I said, hey, can you order online? Can you do it, advanced? Or do you have to come in person? How does it work? He goes, I want you to come in costume again. I'm thinking, the Phillies aren't even playing. They've been long done. But if it gets me to the front of the line, I'll do it. So I go there, and I'm doing my photo ops, and, meeting people, and having a good old time, Met a guy that works on the one local Fox affiliate here, and, he interviewed me, who's going to broadcast my tree lot. This is all going great. So then, the owner goes, listen, what are you doing tomorrow night, Monday? I'm going to the gym, and then pretty much, after that, nothing crazy. Need you to come in tomorrow night. Why? We're having dinner tomorrow night with Jim Jensen that played for the Miami Dolphins for 10 years. I remember Jim Jensen. He was like the Mr. Utility. He was a quarterback, a running back, a tight end, a wide receiver, special teamer. I said, hell yeah. It's like the uncle of a couple guys I grew up with, through marriage. I said, I'll come with Jim Jets. And absolutely. I'm sitting there having dinner with this guy, right? We're sitting there bullshitting. And he said, Mark Wahlberg. Yeah. He's like, I trained him to be a football player for Invincible.
Awesome.
And I'm like, how cool is that? I'm sitting there and I'm talking with a guy that's played in the NFL for 11 years, has 2 AFC championship rings, he had them on. And he trained Mark Wahlberg, how to play football. And he told one story, he goes, because Mark Wahlberg is much shorter than Vince Capelli, the player that he portrayed. So they had to make a lot of the players scale down. So instead of having like a 300-pound offensive lineman at 6'4", it was a guy that was 6 foot, maybe 270. So he didn't overshadow him that much and make it look like almost cartoonish. So next time Mark Wahlberg's in town, I'm like, yeah, I'm down for a meet and greet. I'll meet anybody.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd have to play the Dorchester card to get a meeting.
Yeah. That's you want me to put a stupid costume on? I'll put a stupid costume on. And talking about another New England celebrity, one that we know both very well, our good man Vinny Paz. Did you hear the latest that Vinny Paz did, which is a testament to his being such a fan-friendly guy?
I did not.
A young football player in Iowa recently was injured pretty badly. And, they wanted to do the neck fusion on him. And he said no. Because this kid's 15, 16 years old, maybe. And he said, no, I want to be able to play football again. And they put the halo on him. And Vinny has been sending him, and I saw a lot of the tweets that he's been sending him and a lot of the posts through Vinny's publicist as well, where Vinny's been reaching out. He's been calling the kid. He's been offering him encouragement. And they showed an updated photo where the kid now has the halo off and he's got a regular neck brace on. But that's one thing he said. He goes, no, I don't want you to fuse my neck. I want to be able to play football again. I'm going to try the halo just like in the movie.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, he was in the news for all the wrong reasons, so glad to see him in the news for something positive lately.
Well, you know what, and when you're a guy like that, and you're on top of the world, but Vinny, he's a guy that's like, even when I saw him in Vegas last year, he is 100 miles a minute guy, and sometimes you're right, things happen that aren't always positive, and when you're legitimately a good person, you're deep down a good person, you connect with people, you encourage people, you serve as an inspiration, but sometimes you're that 100 miles a minute guy, and I know with myself sometimes I have a hard time keeping myself grounded and slow, and he is amplified way more than I ever was.
Right. Yeah, Vinny. We got to get Vinny on the show again.
Yeah, I know, don't
Tom's got to get a chance to ask him some questions.
It just came up on my feed where Vinny was tweeting this young man, Cody. So, the hat Cody. But it just came up on my feed that he was retweeting him.
Yeah. Working magic, Tony. Call him up.
When I'm working, I can. I'm working on a video right now, which has a bunch of celebrities that I've met, and the rule is I have to have photos with them, not just of them.
Right.
So at the Marciano thing, I have a photo of Mickey Ward walking in, but I did not get one with him. I won't include that. But I do have ones from other events with Larry Holmes, so I will include that. Or with, Lou Duva. And I said I have a top 3, my 3 holy grails that I need to get before I can make this video. I got Vinny. He was one, and the other two I need are Sly Stallone and Hulk Hogan, and I'm working on them.
All right.
Hogan I should have had this year if it wasn't for the fucking COVID.
Damn COVID.
COVID.
Bullshit.
It is bullshit.
Yeah. The friggin' the poor president, our poor president got it. He's doing good though.
Rich,
better than he has been in 20 years.
There's a meme I have to send you. There's a meme I have to send you. It goes, how bad would it be if they found out that President Trump beat the COVID and his the plasma from his blood is what's needed to beat the disease?
Oh yeah. We talked about that already.
All the people that protest and hate him, and they took a still picture of the one person a couple years ago that was screaming, that was the whole internet meme.
Oh yeah.
With the, no, and they put I remember that on a patient getting her face on a person getting an infusion, and Trump standing there you're getting Trump's blood.
That's awesome.
So I just sent you guys a photo of a gift I got for my nephew last week, and I think he likes it. Tell me your honest opinion of it. It's something obnoxious that I would do.
Yeah, is that what's out in the stands at Phillies game now? same image.
I do have to get out and pick mine up. But this one is just a wall plane. Nice. It's just a 2 foot by 2 foot wall plane of me. Someone dared me. I had to do it.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll chat next week.
Wrap with you guys. Have a wonderful night, as always. Yes.
Yeah. Till next week.
All right, guys. Enjoy the fight. All right.
Adios.